The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Route 66 as Sergeant James Cooper sat in a worn leather booth at Mary's roadside diner. The small bell above the door chimed softly as customers came and went, but Cooper barely moved. His muscular frame remained still, his attention focused on the steaming cup of black coffee in front of him. It had been exactly 3 days since he returned from his third tour in Afghanistan. The peaceful atmosphere of the diner felt almost foreign to him after spending so many months in active combat zones. While other customers chatted and laughed, Cooper's trained eyes continuously scanned his surroundings, a habit that had kept him and his team alive countless times overseas. The elderly waitress, Martha, approached his table with a warm smile. Her name tag was slightly crooked, and her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun. "More coffee, dear?" she asked, already tilting the coffee pot. Cooper nodded politely, watching as she refilled his cup with practiced ease. Her hands trembled slightly, a detail most wouldn't notice, but Cooper's Special Forces training had taught him to observe everything. "You're not from around here, are you?" Martha asked, making friendly conversation. Cooper shook his head, offering a small but genuine smile. "Just passing through, ma'am," he replied, his voice carrying the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of military service. He didn't mention that he was taking the long way home, using the solo road trip to decompress and readjust to civilian life. The diner was exactly the kind of place Cooper needed right now. Simple, quiet, and far from the chaos he'd left behind. The walls were decorated with vintage Route 66 signs and old photographs of classic cars. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, its gentle whirring mixing with the soft country music playing from an old jukebox in the corner. Through the large windows, Cooper could see his motorcycle parked outside, a sleek black Harley-Davidson that he bought before his first deployment. The bike had been waiting for him all these years, carefully maintained by his younger brother. It represented freedom, peace, and everything he'd fought to protect. As Cooper cut into his apple pie, Martha's special recommendation, he couldn't help but notice the other diners. An elderly couple shared a milkshake in the corner booth, reminding him of his grandparents. A young family with 2 small children occupied a table near the entrance, the kids coloring on their paper placemats. A truck driver sat at the counter, exchanging friendly banter with the cook. These were the moments Cooper had dreamed about during long nights in the desert, simple, ordinary scenes of American life. But even here, his military training wouldn't let him fully relax. He'd chosen his seat carefully, back to the wall, clear view of both exits, optimal position to respond to any threat. Some habits couldn't be unlearned, nor did he want to unlearn them. The sound of approaching motorcycles caught his attention before anyone else noticed. Cooper's fingers tensed slightly around his coffee cup as the distant rumble grew louder. Years of combat experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about that sound set off warning bells in his mind. Martha was refilling sugar dispensers at the counter when she heard it too. Cooper noticed how her shoulders stiffened, the way her movements became more hurried. The young mother at the entrance table pulled her children closer, while the truck driver's friendly smile faded into a concerned frown. The growing tension in the diner was palpable as the motorcycle sounds grew closer. Cooper remained outwardly calm, but his mind was already assessing the situation, calculating angles, noting potential weapons of opportunity, and identifying the civilians he might need to protect. It wasn't paranoia, it was professional preparedness. As the roar of engines reached its peak outside the diner, Cooper took another sip of his coffee. His expression remained neutral, but beneath his composed exterior, his body was ready. Whatever was about to walk through that door, Sergeant James Cooper, decorated Special Forces veteran, would be prepared to handle it. The small bell above the door was about to announce visitors who would learn a very important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the quiet one sitting alone. The peaceful atmosphere of Mary's roadside diner shattered as 12 motorcycles thundered into the parking lot. The machines were custom choppers, their chrome pipes gleaming in the afternoon sun. Each bike bore the same symbol, a black skull with blood-red eyes, the mark of the notorious Road Reapers motorcycle gang. Cooper watched through the window as the bikers dismounted. They moved like a pack of wolves, confident in their numbers. Their leather vests were covered in patches that told stories of violence and intimidation. The leader stood out, a giant of a man with a shaved head and a thick beard streaked with gray. Cooper noted the way the others followed his lead, maintaining a precise formation even as they appeared disorganized. The bell above the door didn't just chime this time, it rattled violently as the first three bikers shouldered their way inside. They made a show of it, knocking over the "Please wait to be seated" sign and laughing when it clattered across the floor. The young mother quickly gathered her children and hurried toward the back exit, while the elderly couple hunched lower in their booth. Well, the leader's voice boomed across the diner as he entered. "Looks like we found ourselves a nice quiet place for lunch, boys." His eyes swept across the room, taking in the frightened faces of the customers. He seemed to feed off their fear, his grin growing wider. Martha, the elderly waitress, tried to maintain her professional composure. "Welcome to Mary's," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Please take a seat, and I'll be right with you." She clutched her notepad like a shield, her knuckles white with tension. The bikers spread out through the diner, deliberately taking up more space than necessary. Two of them slid into a booth, kicking their muddy boots up onto the clean table. Another grabbed a chair from a nearby table and sat in the middle of the aisle, blocking the path. The message was clear: they owned the space now. Cooper continued eating his pie, his movements unhurried and deliberate. He kept his head down, but his trained eyes tracked every biker's position. Through the reflection in the chrome napkin holder, he observed three more gang members entering, their hands suspiciously close to their jackets. Cooper recognized the subtle bulges that suggested concealed weapons. "Hey, Grandma," one of the younger bikers called out to Martha. "How about some service here? We're starving." He punctuated his demand by pounding his fist on the table, causing the salt and pepper shakers to dance. His companions laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. The diner's cook, an older man named Bill, stepped out from the kitchen. "Folks," he said, trying to sound firm despite his fear, "we expect our customers to behave with respect." His attempt at authority was met with sneers and chuckles from the gang. The leader, who the others called Slash, stood up slowly. He towered over Bill, using his size to intimidate. "Respect," he growled. "Respect is earned, old man. And right now, you haven't earned ours." He reached out and grabbed Martha's arm as she tried to pass by, causing her to gasp in pain. At that moment, the atmosphere in the diner shifted. The sound of a fork being placed carefully on a plate cut through the tension like a knife. Cooper set down his napkin and slowly pushed his coffee cup aside. His movements were precise, measured, and deliberate. The actions of a man who had learned that true power lies in control. The elderly couple in the corner booth noticed it first. The way Cooper's shoulders settled, his breathing steady and calm. The truck driver at the counter saw it too, recognizing the look of a man who had seen real combat. This wasn't the nervous tension of a civilian about to do something brave but foolish. This was the focused readiness of a trained warrior preparing to act. Slash was still holding Martha's arm, too caught up in his display of dominance to notice the quiet man in the corner booth who was about to change everything. The other bikers were laughing and jeering, unaware that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives by threatening the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sergeant Cooper stood up from his booth with the same careful precision he'd used in countless combat situations. His movement was smooth, unhurried, yet somehow it caught everyone's attention. The diner fell silent, except for the soft country music still playing from the jukebox. "Let her go," Cooper said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of authority that came from years of giving orders in life-or-death situations. His eyes, cold and focused, locked onto Slash's grip on Martha's arm. Slash turned slowly, still holding the waitress. He looked Cooper up and down, taking in the stranger's military bearing and confident stance. For a brief moment, something like uncertainty flickered across his face, but it quickly disappeared behind a mask of arrogance. "Mind your own business, boy," Slash growled, tightening his grip. Martha winced in pain. "Unless you want to learn why they call me Slash." Cooper took 3 measured steps forward. Each step was purposeful, closing the distance while maintaining perfect balance. To the untrained eye, he appeared relaxed, but the truck driver at the counter noticed how Cooper's feet were positioned, ready to move in any direction instantly. "That was your warning," Cooper said, his voice still calm. "The only one you'll get." His hands hung loose at his sides, but every muscle in his body was prepared. He faced down insurgents and terrorists. A group of overconfident bikers didn't even register as a serious threat. Two of the younger road reapers moved to flank Cooper, thinking they were being clever. Cooper noted their positions without turning his head, his peripheral vision, honed by years of combat awareness, tracking their every move. They were amateurs, telegraphing their intentions with every step. Slash shoved Martha aside, causing her to stumble into a table. The elderly couple quickly helped her to safety, pulling her toward their corner booth. The gang leader stepped toward Cooper, using his height to loom over him. "Do you have any idea who we are?" he snarled. "Road Reapers," Cooper replied matter-of-factly. "Local thugs who prey on civilians because you're too cowardly to pick on someone who can fight back." His words were delivered without emotion, just a simple statement of fact. The insult hit home. Slash's face turned red with rage. Behind Cooper, the two flanking bikers tensed, ready to jump in. 3 more gang members stood up from their seats, while others moved to block the exits. They thought they were surrounding Cooper. In reality, they were just making it easier for him to deal with them all at once. "You got a big mouth?" Slash sneered, cracking his knuckles. "Let's see if you can back it up." He pulled back his fist, telegraphing a wild haymaker that Cooper could have spotted from a mile away. Time seemed to slow down for Cooper, just as it always did in combat. His trained mind processed everything: the position of each biker, the locations of the civilians, potential weapons, escape routes, and points of cover. In Afghanistan, this kind of situational awareness had kept his entire team alive during ambushes. Here, it would help him protect innocent people from common thugs. The cook, Bill, reached for the phone behind the counter, but one of the bikers pointed at him threateningly. "Don't even think about it, old man," the biker warned. The few remaining customers pressed themselves against the walls, trying to stay out of the way of what they thought would be a brutal gang beating. What they were about to witness instead would become a local legend. Cooper remained perfectly still as Slash's fist began its arc toward his face. The other bikers were grinning, expecting to see this foolish stranger get destroyed by their leader. They didn't notice the subtle shift in Cooper's weight, the slight bend in his knees, or the calculating look in his eyes. In the next few seconds, the Road Reapers would learn a painful lesson about judging people by appearances. They would discover the hard way that they hadn't just picked a fight with some random man. They had threatened civilians in front of a highly trained Special Forces operator who had spent years perfecting the art of close-quarters combat. Slash's fist cut through the air where Cooper's head had been just a split second before. But Cooper wasn't there anymore. He had shifted exactly 2 inches to the right, the minimum movement needed to avoid the punch. Before Slash could process what had happened, Cooper's counterattack was already in motion. In one fluid movement, Cooper grabbed Slash's extended arm and used the biker's own momentum against him. A simple twist of his wrist, a precise shift of his body weight, and suddenly the massive gang leader was flying through the air. Slash crashed into an empty table, sending plates and silverware scattering across the floor. The 2 bikers who had been trying to flank Cooper attacked at once. The one on the left threw a wild punch while the one on the right reached for something in his jacket. Cooper dealt with both threats simultaneously. His left hand deflected the punch while his right foot shot out in a precise kick that knocked the second biker's hand away from his concealed weapon. "Get him!" Slash roared from the floor, spitting out pieces of broken plate. 3 more Road Reapers charged forward, their boots thundering on the diner's linoleum floor. Cooper moved like water, each action flowing smoothly into the next. He sidestepped the first attacker, using the man's charge to send him stumbling into his companions. As they collided with each other, Cooper's elbow found a precise point on one biker's shoulder, instantly numbing his entire arm. The truck driver at the counter watched in amazement. This wasn't the wild brawling he'd seen in bar fights. Every move Cooper made was economical, precise, and devastating. No energy was wasted, no movement was excessive. This was professional military combat training in action. One of the younger bikers pulled out a switchblade, its steel blade clicking open with a sharp snap. Cooper's response was immediate. He grabbed a metal serving tray from a nearby table and used it to deflect the knife thrust. In the same motion, he brought the tray's edge down on the biker's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor, followed quickly by its owner. "He's military," one of the bikers shouted, finally recognizing the professional nature of Cooper's fighting style. The warning came too late for his friends. Two more road reapers tried to rush Cooper from different angles. He stepped between them at the last second, causing them to crash into each other. Before they could recover, Cooper's hands found pressure points on both men's necks. They dropped to their knees, their muscles refusing to respond to their commands. Slash had managed to get back to his feet, his face red with rage and embarrassment. He reached behind his back and pulled out a heavy chain. "You're dead, soldier boy," he snarled, swinging the makeshift weapon in a wide arc. Cooper's response demonstrated years of combat experience. He stepped inside the chain's arc, where its momentum couldn't hurt him. His right hand shot out, fingers rigid, striking a cluster of nerves in Slash's forearm. The chain fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Before Slash could react, Cooper executed a perfect sweep, taking the bigger man's legs out from under him. The gang leader crashed to the floor again, this time with Cooper's knee firmly planted on his chest and his arm locked in a joint hold that sent waves of pain through his shoulder. "Stay down," Cooper advised quietly. "Your shoulder is one wrong move away from needing surgery." The cold professionalism in his voice convinced Slash that the threat was real. The remaining road reapers stood frozen, unsure what to do. In less than 30 seconds, their fearsome leader and half their crew had been systematically taken apart by one man. The few who were still standing began backing toward the door. Martha, the elderly waitress, stood protected behind the counter with Bill the cook, her eyes wide with amazement. The elderly couple in the corner booth were holding hands, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of fear and awe. None of them had ever seen anything like this outside of action movies. But this was no movie. This was the real-world application of years of Special Forces training, executed by a soldier who had spent his career protecting others from threats far more dangerous than local thugs. And he wasn't finished yet. The remaining road reapers who could still stand faced a critical decision. Their leader lay pinned beneath Cooper's knee, and half their brothers were scattered across the diner floor, groaning in pain. The smart choice would have been to retreat, but pride and anger clouded their judgment. "He's just one man," shouted a biker with a snake tattoo on his neck. "Rush him all at once." 3 of his companions moved forward, while 2 others circled around toward the counter. Cooper noticed one of them reaching for his boot, where a hidden knife handle was barely visible. Cooper applied slightly more pressure to Slash's shoulder joint, causing the gang leader to grunt in pain. "Tell them to stand down," Cooper said quietly, "or we'll find out how much pressure this joint can take." His voice remained calm, but his eyes tracked every movement in the room. Slash, for all his faults, could recognize when he was beaten. "Stand down," he barked at his men, sweat beading on his forehead from the pain. "Everyone stand down." The advancing bikers hesitated, unused to hearing fear in their leader's voice. But the biker with the snake tattoo wasn't listening. He grabbed a coffee pot from a nearby table and hurled it at Cooper's head. Cooper's response was instantaneous. He shifted his weight, maintaining control of Slash while catching the coffee pot with his free hand. In one smooth motion, he set it gently on the floor, not spilling a single drop. The display of skill shocked everyone in the diner. The elderly couple in the corner booth exchanged amazed glances. Martha, still behind the counter, whispered "Good Lord" under her breath. Even some of the bikers looked impressed despite themselves. "Last chance," Cooper announced to the room. "Those who can walk can leave now. Those who can't will wait here for the police." His tone made it clear this wasn't a negotiation. To emphasize his point, he made a slight adjustment to his hold on Slash, causing the gang leader to inhale sharply. Snake Tattoo wasn't ready to give up. He reached behind his back, and Cooper saw the unmistakable grip of a pistol. Before the weapon could clear the biker's waistband, Cooper acted. He released Slash's arm and kicked a nearby chair with precise force. The chair slid across the floor, hitting Snake Tattoo's legs just as he was drawing his weapon. The biker stumbled, and Cooper closed the distance between them in 2 rapid steps. What happened next was almost too fast for observers to follow. Cooper's hand clamped down on Snake Tattoo's wrist, his thumb finding a pressure point that caused the biker's fingers to spasm open. The pistol dropped, but Cooper caught it before it hit the floor. In one fluid motion, he removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, and slid both pieces across the floor in opposite directions. 2 more bikers made a final desperate attempt to rush Cooper. He met them with the same efficient precision he'd shown throughout the fight. A quick strike to one solar plexus left him gasping for air. The other received an expertly executed throw that sent him crashing into an empty booth. The remaining road reapers finally got the message. Those who could still move began backing toward the door, driving some of their injured companions with them. Cooper let them go, his attention focused on securing the most dangerous threats, Slash and Snake Tattoo. Bill the cook had finally managed to call the police. "They're on their way," he announced, his voice shaky but relieved. Cooper nodded, maintaining his vigilance. He used his boot to slide the scattered pieces of the pistol toward the counter, keeping them away from the subdued bikers. Martha, showing remarkable composure, began checking on the other customers. The elderly couple assured her they were fine, though they couldn't take their eyes off Cooper. The truck driver at the counter was already on his phone, apparently telling someone about the incredible scene he had just witnessed. Through it all, Cooper's breathing remained steady and controlled. His movements were still precise and economical, even as he secured the scene and checked on the injured bikers. This wasn't the end of the situation. He could hear police sirens in the distance, but the immediate threat had been neutralized with surgical precision. Police sirens grew louder as 3 patrol cars pulled into the diner's parking lot, their red and blue lights flashing through the windows. Cooper remained calm, keeping Slash and Snake Tattoo secured while maintaining awareness of the entire room. Years of military training had taught him that the moments after a confrontation could be just as dangerous as the fight itself. The first officer through the door had his weapon drawn, but he quickly assessed that Cooper had the situation under control. "Police? Everyone stay where you are," the officer announced, his eyes scanning the scene of scattered bikers and overturned furniture. "Military police training, sir," Cooper called out clearly, making sure his hands were visible while still maintaining control of his captives. "I have 2 subjects secured. One has an empty weapon on the floor by the counter, separated from its magazine." His precise report, delivered in clear law enforcement terminology, immediately told the officers they were dealing with a professional. More officers entered the diner, quickly moving to secure the scene. The lead officer, whose nameplate read Anderson, approached Cooper. "You can release them, sir. We'll take it from here." He noticed Cooper's controlled movements and perfect situational awareness. "Military?" "Yes, sir. Sergeant James Cooper, Special Forces," Cooper replied, smoothly transitioning control of the 2 bikers to the officers. These men were harassing the staff and customers. They escalated to physical threats and eventually produced weapons. His report was concise and professional, exactly what the officers needed. Martha stepped forward, still shaking slightly but determined to speak. "He saved us," she told the officers, her voice growing stronger. "That big one was hurting me, and the others were threatening everyone. This young man stepped in and protected us all." The elderly couple and truck driver nodded in agreement. Officer Anderson took statements while his colleagues secured the scene and called for medical assistance for the injured bikers. None of them were seriously hurt. Cooper had used exactly the amount of force needed to neutralize the threat, nothing more. "Found it," one officer called out, holding up Snake Tattoo's pistol and magazine in an evidence bag. "Serial number's been filed off." He checked the separated pieces. "Weapons clear," just like he said. The discovery of the illegal firearm changed the severity of the charges the bikers would face. The truck driver approached the officers, holding up his phone. "I got most of it on video," he said. "Started recording when things got tense. This soldier didn't do anything wrong. It's all clear as day what happened." Officer Anderson nodded, grateful for the additional evidence. Cooper stood calmly to the side, letting the police do their work. He watched as paramedics arrived to check on the injured bikers, noting with professional satisfaction that none required serious medical attention. His calculated responses had neutralized the threat while minimizing harm, exactly as his training had taught him. Bill, the cook, was giving his statement to another officer. "They've been terrorizing local businesses for months," he explained. "Nobody's been able to stand up to them. Until today." He looked at Cooper with newfound respect. Slash and Snake Tattoo were led out in handcuffs, their tough guy personas shattered. The other injured bikers were being treated by paramedics before their own arrests. Those who had fled would be found soon enough. Several customers had managed to take photos of their bikes and license plates. "Going to need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement," Officer Anderson told Cooper. but from what I can see here, this is a clear case of defending others from armed assailants." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Nice work, Sergeant." Martha insisted on wrapping up some fresh pie for Cooper to take with him. "On the house, dear," she said, her hands now steady as she packed the dessert. "Though I suspect free pie is a pretty small thank you for what you did here today." As officers continued processing the scene, Cooper noticed something interesting. The remaining customers, instead of being traumatized by the violence, were watching him with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. They had witnessed something rare, not just the physical skills of a trained soldier, but the controlled, professional response of someone who had sworn to protect others. By nightfall, the story of what happened at Mary's roadside diner had spread through 3 counties. The truck driver's video, uploaded to social media, went viral within hours. Local news vans parked outside the police station, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious soldier who had single-handedly taken down the notorious Road Reapers. Inside the station, Cooper sat in an interview room with Detective Sarah Martinez, giving his official statement. His account was clear, precise, and matched perfectly with the video evidence and witness statements. The detective couldn't help but notice how he included every relevant detail while staying completely humble about his actions. "You've done this community a huge service, Sergeant Cooper," Detective Martinez said, closing her notebook. "The Road Reapers have been a growing problem for months. We've had reports of extortion, vandalism, and assault, but witnesses were always too scared to testify." She smiled. "Now we have everything we need to shut them down for good." Cooper nodded quietly. "Just glad I could help, ma'am." He hadn't mentioned his special forces background, but the detective had already pulled his service record. The commendations and combat experiences listed there explained his exceptional handling of the situation. Outside the interview room, Martha sat with several other local business owners who had come forward to file their own complaints against the Road Reapers. The gang's reign of terror was ending, not with a massive police operation, but because one soldier had chosen to stand up and do the right thing. "The DA's office is pushing for maximum charges," Officer Anderson told Cooper as he escorted him out. "Between the illegal weapon, assault, and their prior records, Slash and his core group are looking at serious time." He paused, then added, "Though I suspect the Road Reaper's reputation is finished either way. Hard to intimidate people after getting taken apart by one man in a diner." The truck driver's video had already reached military circles. Veterans who saw it recognized the telltale signs of Special Forces close-quarters combat training. Online forums buzzed with frame-by-frame analysis of Cooper's techniques, with many using it as a teaching example of minimum force application in a civilian environment. Back at the diner, which had become something of a local attraction, Bill and Martha were busy serving curious customers who wanted to sit in the booth where it all started. The elderly couple who had witnessed everything had returned for dinner, happily telling the story to anyone who would listen. "You moved like nothing I've ever seen," the elderly man explained to his eager audience. But it wasn't just his fighting skills. It was how he handled everything. Calm, professional, didn't hurt anyone more than necessary. That's a real American hero right there. Local veterans began stopping by the diner, leaving their unit patches as a show of respect. A wall near Cooper's booth quickly filled with these tokens of military brotherhood. Martha made sure to tell every visitor how Cooper had remained humble and polite throughout the entire incident. At the hospital, where several Road Reapers were being treated for minor injuries, the attending doctor remarked on the precision of their injuries. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing," she told a nurse. "The injuries are precise, controlled, meant to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. I've only seen this kind of thing from highly trained military personnel." The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled "Silent Guardian: How One Soldier Protected Our Town." The article praised not just Cooper's actions, but the way he had conducted himself throughout the incident. It highlighted how his military training had allowed him to end a dangerous situation without any serious injuries or property damage. Cooper himself had politely declined interview requests and avoided the growing media attention. He knew that somewhere, other Road Reapers chapters would see the video of their brothers being systematically taken apart. The message would be clear: there were lines they couldn't cross, and consequences for threatening innocent people. As evening fell, more customers filled the diner, discussing the day's events. The story was already becoming a local legend, growing with each retelling. But the true impact wasn't in the dramatic details of the fight. It was in how one person's willingness to stand up against wrongdoing had inspired an entire community to reclaim its sense of security and pride. 1 week after the incident at Mary's roadside diner, the changes in the community were clear to everyone. The Road Reapers clubhouse stood empty, its members either in jail or having fled the area. Local business owners walked with newfound confidence, no longer fearing harassment or demands for protection money. The diner itself had become something of a landmark, drawing visitors from neighboring towns who wanted to see where it all happened. Cooper's booth, as people now called it, had a small plaque installed above it. Martha had insisted on it, though she knew Cooper would probably shake his head at such recognition if he saw it. The simple brass plate read, "Sometimes the strongest warriors are the quietest ones. Thank you, Sergeant Cooper." The security camera footage from the diner had become required viewing at the local police academy. Training officers used it to demonstrate the perfect balance of force application and situation control. "Notice how he never escalates beyond what's necessary," they would tell their cadets. "That's not just training. That's the discipline of someone who understands the true meaning of protecting and serving." Local news reported that Slash and 5 other Road Reapers had accepted plea deals, facing significant prison time. The illegal weapon charges alone carried heavy sentences, but the DA's office had dozens of witnesses ready to testify about their past crimes. The gang's reputation was shattered, and other criminal organizations in the region took notice. Nobody wanted to become the next viral video of a tough guy getting systematically dismantled by a quiet veteran. Martha had received letters from other diner owners across the country, sharing similar stories of intimidation by local gangs. Her responses always included the same message: one person standing up can give others the courage to do the same. The incident had sparked a wider conversation about community protection and the importance of standing up to bullies. The elderly couple who had witnessed everything became regular fixtures at the diner, always sitting in their corner booth. They would often tell visitors how Cooper had remained completely calm throughout the entire incident, how his focus had been on protecting others rather than showing off his skills. Their story never changed, no matter how many times they told it. Bill, the cook, had hung a Special Forces emblem alongside the unit patches on what was now called the Wall of Respect. Below it, he placed a framed copy of Cooper's quote from the police report: "The greatest victory is the one that requires the least violence." The words resonated with many veterans who visited the diner, recognizing the wisdom that came from real combat experience. 3 months after the incident, a small package arrived at the diner. Inside was a handwritten note and a carved wooden plaque. The note read, "Dear Martha and Bill, I heard about the wall of patches and the booth plaque. While I appreciate the recognition, the real heroes are people like you who show up every day, treating others with kindness and standing strong in the face of intimidation. The plaque is from my old unit. It belongs with the others. Sergeant Cooper." The wooden plaque now held a place of honor on the wall. Regular customers noticed that Martha would often touch it gently when she passed by, as if drawing strength from what it represented. The diner had become more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of how one person's courage could transform an entire community. Local children would often ask to hear the story, and Martha made sure to emphasize the most important parts. "Sergeant Cooper didn't win because he was the strongest or knew how to fight," she would tell them. "He won because he chose to stand up for what was right, and he did it without letting anger or fear control his actions." The incident had lasting effects beyond just the local area. Police departments in other towns reported that criminal organizations had become more hesitant to openly harass businesses. The video had reminded them that you never knew when a highly trained veteran might be quietly enjoying a cup of coffee, ready to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. A year later, Mary's roadside diner remained a popular stop along Route 66. Travelers would come in, order a slice of Martha's apple pie, and ask to hear the story of the quiet soldier who had changed everything. The regular customers never tired of telling it, because they understood that it was more than just a tale of action and excitement. It was a reminder that true strength often comes wrapped in humility, and that one person choosing to do the right thing can inspire others to find their own courage.